Good evening, everyone. Please rename your name in this meeting. In this class. Put your name along with your institution name so that it becomes easier to call you or even address you. And we also know how many participants are from which institutions. Pratyusha, you want to say something? Pratyasha, sorry. In case you want to share something, do share or lower your hand, please.
Good morning, friends. Good evening, all of you. Welcome to this course. As my colleague Anamika has suggested, it'll be very helpful if you also put your institution name along with your name. Some of you have already done that, and some have only put the institute name, no personal name. So you can easily, yes, Minal has given us a clue. You can go to your name and rename it. So it will help. It will help. That's right, Yogita. You have done that. So just please, Vilasha, CSI, right, like that. Everybody can do that. That would be very nice. Is there any other on the name plate of our, you put it on the name so that your name sounds when we talk to you, it is easier for us to recognize from where you are. Now, this course is a very interesting course for us, at least because in the previous 2 rounds, we have learned a lot from many of you. And I'm sure this time it is not going to be any different. Are you all able to hear us? Is there any problem in sound?
No, sir, we can hear perfectly.
Good. And please feel free to interrupt anytime. You don't have to wait for us to finish presentation and then you will interrupt. You could interrupt, you could ask question, you could make a comment, you could give an example, or you could question what we are saying. You could suggestion anytime, anyone, please feel free. Except that if it is a logistical question or if it is something that can be tackled administratively, then please send us a mail. Anamika's mail is she's the CEO at Gyan and also visiting faculty at Indian Institute of Management Ahmedabad and ACSIR. Her email is anamika@gian.org. She has put it in the chat. And mine is very simple. You can put it, I will put that also, anilji@gyan.org or anilji@ima.ac.in. Shakila, did you want to say something? Shakila Khatun, you raised hand. Shakila, you have raised hand. Do you want to comment on something? Or is it by chance that you have raised it? Shakila, I'm not able to hear from you. Should I lower your hand then? If it is not anything specific that you want to check? Please, Shakila? I'm not able to hear, so I'm lowering your hand. But please don't mind. If you want to raise hand, you can anytime. Maybe in this case, Shakila had done it inadvertently. All right, so welcome to the course, and I will share with you my screen so that you can see what we are going to do in this course. I hope the screen is visible to all of you. We'll go through the outline and discuss what we're trying to achieve.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. We are aware, I and Anamika, both of us are aware that you come from various labs. You're all in very fundamental research in many cases or applied research in other cases. You're all concerned, you're all very bright, you're going through a lot of competitive process, this is stage. And we're also conscious that each one of you wants to distinguish oneself in one way or the other. The purpose of this course, of course, is to help you to become a little more aware of the unmet needs that exist in our society, and we learn to live with them for a very long time. So we want to understand the roots of inertia, but also roots of creativity. How does a society become impatient with inertia so that it can generate innovative solutions that meet the unmet needs? Now, we understand that some of you will be doing your research on problems that may be very advanced, that may be for industry, that may be for defense, that may be for some very specific sector, it may be for drug industry, it may be for aeronautics, it may be for chemical industry. We realize that. But we also realize that each one of you eventually will become a leader, a science leader, a technology leader, a business leader. Maybe some of you will become entrepreneur. Some of you will become policymaker. And we're investing through this course in your awareness, in your consciousness, in your being, in your ability to spot the problems that either from disciplinary perspective or interdisciplinary perspective can be tackled, solved, and addressed in a manner that larger social good takes place. Sometimes in a course, you can do, many times you do experiments in the courses. Of course, many courses require that. And instead of doing a hypothetical problem and which you work, sometimes just a few hours of work, a few days of work in a course could help solve the problem with which tribal people or rural workers or farmers or artisans are struggling for years. So the idea is that if 1% of your time, 0.01% of your time is available to address certain needs, it might be a great idea. But if your research problem itself can accommodate some of these unmet needs, nothing like that. So we are assuming that even if you are engaged with a problem that is complex, that is required to be addressed for a very large company or very large corporation or very large enterprise, you still will have some energy available to address the problems that have remained unaddressed. We will also, let me share with you the step-by-step what goals we have set for this course. And then we will try to see how in different sessions, through your active participation, we will try to learn from innovations for or from grassroots. For meaning when you solve some problem for grassroots, that is for. When somebody from the grassroots level, from the community level solves the problem, that becomes from. So our first assumption, or you can say purpose in this course is, and both of us will share some insights about that today, that creative ideas can emerge from anywhere, anyone, anytime. And obviously, therefore, our goal is to listen, learn, to leverage these ideas. We also realize that inclusivity is very important. What is inclusive? We will discuss various ways today in which some people get excluded because they live in difficult regions or they are lacking certain skills or their language. They don't know our language. They do not have access to us. They do not know how to articulate their problems so that we can understand. So there are different reasons why some people get excluded. Some communities get excluded. Some regions get excluded for a long time. Some of you, I'm sure, are from Northeast or Jammu or some other region, Central India. And you know that in many regions of our country, they are living in a different age, maybe 100 years behind, maybe 200 years behind. But in respect to traditional knowledge, maybe they are ahead of us, and we need to bridge that gap. So we are also looking at the potential of solutions, bottom-up solutions, grassroots solutions, and traditional knowledge solutions, or user-led solutions. Somebody who is using your technology and may make modification in what you have done. And that modification, that incremental change in the solution that you have provided might provide a clue about something that we had ignored in our thought process when we were developing that solution. So a lot of very interesting solutions have come from people who are users of the technologies that various CSR labs may develop. We haven't paid enough attention, though, I must say. But in times to come, you will realize that in cases where you have licensed the technology, and if you go to the user of that technology, spend time and walk through the shop floor and look at the workers, look at the supervisors, look at the engineers and managers who are using these sort of processes that you have developed, or technology or solutions or devices that you have developed, you might realize that some people have made some modification. For instance, many years ago, maybe 10 years ago, 15 years ago, when mobile phones just came to our country, there were people who realized that, and at that time, there were no phones with two SIM cards. But some mavericks had developed a system of adding a small attachment by which you could add in the conventional phone 2 SIM cards. And of course, all of you are aware about the way people used to communicate with only missed calls. So there are a lot of local solutions that emerge in various areas of our engagement. And these solutions may be of interest to us as heuristics for frugal affordable solution. We will also like that policy implications of technological innovations are understood or institutional changes that are required. My feeling is, and please correct me if I'm wrong or my colleague is not, and both of us are not fully in line, in sync with your thinking, that many of you, when you develop solutions, and sometimes the public policy makers or government, state government, do not take up that technology very well or do solutions very rapidly for larger social good, we may feel that, look, there is something not right, but we may not realize that we needed to feed or seed the idea of that solution at different levels than where we develop the solution. How do we lobby for policy changes? How do we lobby for institutions is an issue that we also need to be aware of. To bring about one change at one level, way back in 1983, when we wrote a paper on action research for microwave planning, we realized that to institutionalize a small change, you have to bring about many changes at different levels. And it's very important. You all know how Aadhaar has become an embedded system for a large number of other applications. It makes transition from one to another easier many times. So how we create institutional context in which our solutions will get diffused widely is also one of the concerns that we'll try to address. We will draw examples from a whole range of areas, and Honeybee Network would obviously provide a context for many of these solutions that we will discuss with you today and in future. For last 35, 34 years, we have been working towards a framework that I will explain in a minute. And we will also like that some of you may find time to create knowledge public good. I'm a great believer in public good, knowledge public databases, open access solutions. I would wish that all your papers must be available in open access to everybody, every scholar. You would like that also probably, that some papers are so costly to access if you don't have access to the institutional library. And in such cases, you may have, some of your colleagues in the less privileged institutions may be lacking access. So we have been creating a lot of databases. We have gyati.techpedia.in, which is, some of you might be aware that we give awards, Gandhian Young Technological Innovation Award, and there's a database of those projects. We have a techpedia.in, which has more than 200,000 abstracts or titles of engineering projects from thousands of students all over the country. And recently a database has been built of abundant patents in US Patent Office, 1 million abundant patents. These are all free to use. And some of you might find them useful for their own research. Then of course, NIF has put at the innovation portal about 131,000 innovations and traditional. Gyan has a grid.untp.org.in grassroots innovation database, which was developed for UNTP, and which has examples of a few thousand innovations for and from grassroots. We also have many other databases that I have listed here, and we will share a list of all these databases which you can easily access at different times. So idea is that we must try to increase as much as possible. We should try to democratize knowledge and increase the access to knowledge so that more people can participate in the exchange of knowledge, its improvement, its value addition, its application. What is the pedagogy? The pedagogy is that while we will facilitate discussion, we are not only going to be the source of knowledge and learning in the class. I mean, many of you know a particular subject far more than any one of us. So you have extreme expertise in many areas, and we want to learn, and each one of us should be willing to learn from each other. So please appreciate that this is a kind of a framework that we want to create of an open society, of an open innovation, where we learn from each other. And we will also discuss what are the ways in which we immerse in the reality. So for instance, in one of the sessions, we are going to discuss the traditional knowledge that you may get from your grandparents, from your granduncle, from your service provider at home, from a maid servant or a male servant, or a gardener or a driver or a lab attendant. I mean, we can learn from anybody, isn't it? And we have to demonstrate that ability. And I'm sure you will do that. And that will make us not only humble, but also curious and respectful that knowledge doesn't flow only vertically from the Matadhish, the high priest of discipline or institution, to the younger ones. No, it can flow in any direction. Yes, please, anybody? If you want to say something, please feel free to just raise hand or interrupt. We would also therefore like that some of the solutions that you develop during this course could be DIY solution where you can make it available to anybody in the society. People can benefit from your assignment, your projects. And they will also realize that CSIR is really concerned, scholars are really concerned, both for learning from common people and from elderly people and from communities, and also sharing with them their knowledge. So we will take up different kinds of assignments. The first session today will be about learning from uncommon quarters, learning from anyone, including children. We will also look at different kinds of learning, artifactual, analogic, heuristic, and gestalt, 4 levels at which we can learn from the same solution, different degrees of abstraction. And obviously, as you realize that higher the level of abstraction of knowledge, broader is the domain of application. A principle can be applied far more widely than a specific solution, specific technology. So we will try to see how we extract the lessons from whatever solution that we bring to the class, into the discussion, such that some of them will go beyond our discipline or domain. And as I said, we will try to learn from different sources. The second session is about inertia. Why do we live with problems not solved? And we will also highlight the fact that the problems, the processes, or the work that women do, in those activities, the rate of technological change is far slower. Why? You will have to think about it. We will also think about it and share it. And there's a book that I will share with you. I don't know if any one of you has read that book or heard about it. Has anybody heard about Mothers and Daughters of Invention? Anybody has heard about this book? You can put in the chat. Anybody has read this book, Mothers and Daughters of Invention? Some of you must be doing at this moment search on the net. Doesn't matter. But the reason I'm asking is, this is the kind of book and literature that I would like you to bring to the class so that it opens our eyes. Autumn Stanley spent 13 years of her life in looking at 200 years data of US Patent and Trademark Office to find out share of women inventors in US Patent and Trademark Office, US. And they found, and we will go into detail later, but it's important to know that there are biases which exist in terms of acknowledging the insights, the contributions. Sometimes those situation is improving now, but not enough. And therefore, we must be aware of the fact that solutions for women, solutions or knowledge from women needs much greater attention. We'll also realize that many of us have killed our ideas, no less than anybody else. We are all murderers of our ideas. Each one of you at one stage or the other has murdered one or the other ideas that you had in your mind, did not pay attention. You thought, how can it be? No, this is not going to work. And then after some years, you find someone has developed a solution. So, well, I thought about it 3 years ago. So what? Thinking is not enough. So we will talk about inertia and different factors that convert or make us transit from inertia to innovation, initiative, innovation, and how do we then develop different kinds of solutions. In the third session, we will look at the unmet need. How do we identify unmet need at different levels? Some instruments that you are using may lack certain kinds of capabilities. I mean, you would know that most of the path-breaking research that has been done around the world, including in India, may have required certain measurements. And if the equipments which we have cannot measure that phenomena at the level of accuracy or detail that we want, then we design equipments. We design new instruments. And we don't allow the limitation of the instrument to become limitation of our imagination. Please switch off. Please switch off. So we should not, if you want to say something, then there are two mics open in your place, I think. Whoever was trying to speak. But I would like that some of you will give examples where some of you may have, or your seniors or your colleagues or professors, may have redesigned the certain equipment or certain attachment equipment to measure something, manipulate something, to solve a problem that the designers have thought about. Otherwise, limitation of the instrument will become a limitation of our imagination. That's a good way of doing research. How do grassroots people sometimes solve problems? Because they don't take the limitation of their tools, old as they are, as limitation of their imagination. This is something that we need to learn. You may also find that devices that your parents use in your family, your mother uses in the kitchen, or otherwise, may have some limitation, may have design defect, and we are not cared. We might, in fact, like to reduce our drudgery if we could improve the design of certain things. So we will look at that. And each one of you will share at least one unmet need. We will share with you a folder, a spreadsheet, which will help you to put down the unmet need in different columns along with your detail. Maybe you can put more than one or two, and you can also give a reason why this need has been unmet. It could be a technological need, most likely. That's science or technological need, design problem, and we will look at that. Session 4 is about Honeybee Network itself. How did this grassroots innovation movement evolve? And how can the informal sector be supported by the formal sector? I'll also give an example of how some very complex problems can be solved using excellent frontier science, using very simple materials. And this is a link I have given of a research that was done by certain colleagues at Dr. Kulkarni and his student, an Indian student of Indian origin at MIT, where they have solved the problem of water filter using a very, very interesting material. You should look up that solution. And to think simply, that is one of the contributions that Honeybee Network is trying to make to all of us, our thinking. Sometimes we are used to thinking in very complex terms, and therefore solutions that are extremely affordable, solutions that are simple, escape our thinking process. So we will try to look at that. We will also realize that some of the wicked problems that have remained unaddressed for a long time, require collaboration, require us to work together. And therefore, we will work to discuss that possibility as to how some of the solutions, some of the projects that you will do, some of the assignment that you will do, could be across the lab. You can make some groups across the lab if possible. We will encourage you to do that if you wish to do. The session 5 is about blending formal and informal science. So we will look at examples of technology research where the scientists have validated certain practices by common people, by farmers, by artisans, and demonstrated scientifically that they were as good, if not better, than anything that they knew in the formal science, institutional science. So what happens? We will also look at the case study of Artemism. And CDRI, yes, some of you must be from CDRI. You know that a lot of research was done at CDRI, but Nobel Prize went to China. And why did it go there? How did they tackle this problem? What role did a manuscript of 7th century play in solving a chronic problem? Problem where Artemism was very unstable. It sometimes would work in the body, sometimes it was not working in the body. And understand why and how that problem was solved by a clue that they got from a manuscript of 7th century. It's a beautiful story. Some of you might like to read that. It was published in Hindu newspaper and elsewhere. There are journal articles on that. And it's useful to know sometimes our hesitation to look at knowledge from other perspectives, other sources, prevents us from making breakthrough. We are very good in doing research, obviously, but why don't we make as many breakthroughs as some other people might be making? They may not be more competent than us, but maybe they are more open to learn from outside, which sometimes some of us may not be. Many of us are, and they make breakthroughs. For those who are not, and talk about this example of milk as a viral control. We will discuss that. The next session is about open innovation and how openness to share, openness to source ideas, openness to learn opens vistas of knowledge. How do we create open science? Today, there's a very interesting news. An AI tool has been developed at MIT, which can very accurately predict or explain folding patterns of proteins, millions of them, and using different hypotheses that you may have, you can predict the structures that will emerge when you have some mutations. Now, an AI tool which is able to predict folding of proteins would require huge data. And this data is available with thousands of scientists. And these scientists have spent a lot of their resources in generating this data, but they're all willing to share it. So collaboration, sharing the data, trusting each other, respecting each other, knowing that while solution will be developed by a smaller group, that smaller group cannot go very far. The AI tool will not go very far if they did not have sufficient data to train the tool. And then they divided themselves into two groups. One will do the physical experiment and create the protein and measure its fold. And second group will do the computational biology, predict it and generate the structure. And then they will match it to validate the tool. And people will look at different kinds of proteins. I have tweeted this. So if you wish to read about this thread and also the full paper, please do read it. Those of you who are in biological science might find this thread very interesting. So the question is that public sharing of knowledge, and I found that this example just today was so heartening that ultimately the science will require a lot of openness to share data, to collaborate and to help each other to solve complex problems. And all of this is an open source. This AI tool that MIT has developed is available free to anybody to use. How nice. So this is a framework which will going to democratize and make people in small labs use the same tool that people in ISC or CSR lab will use and sometimes compete with you and maybe generate good ideas that we thought would not emerge from small or less respected labs. But with these tools, the playing field will become level. Competition and collaboration both will increase. The next session is about diffusion of innovations and incentives that are required or that are going to work, material, non-material, individual, collective. What kind of portfolio of incentives we develop which will help us to scale innovations. One of the very chronic problems that a lot of solutions remain on the shelf. So how do we do that? What do we do with the Ghanaian utopia of decentralized economic development? How do we achieve that? How do we make tools of solving problems accessible to people who need them? How do our solutions reach people for whom they are meant? We will look at that. And then the 10th session is on policy and institutional changes required for accessing these solutions by the industry or the communities. And then we have presentation. We'll also look at the scientific innovation policy, we'll look at pilot projects and other activities. The readings, those of you who have time and interest in reading, there are folders for each session. There I will keep on adding, Anamika also will keep on adding some papers, whichever you find interesting. Whenever you find it interesting, do have a look at some of the papers on the topic before the class, after the class, as it suits you, so that some interdisciplinary readings will broaden your perspective and help. Hopefully we will have more intensive dialogue. We are planning to have presentation by you on your project synopsis, because you may not be able to finish it by September, surely not, but you will need more time. But if we discuss the synopsis, there are three dates possible. 25th is Sunday, 26th is Monday when we have a session, and 27th we can have a session if you wish, because all of you will not be able to make presentation in 1 or 2 days. Our experience shows that sometimes we need third day. So on 27th we will have, because I have another class which is ending at 6 o'clock. This where, so 7 to 9:30 we could have a session on 27th. You can tell me if that is possible, and we will have. Otherwise, you will submit as an option. If all of you cannot present the class, but I would wish that you do, because then everybody will come to know. And feedback need not come from us, but it can also come from each one of you. So before we proceed with the discussion of the day, anybody has any question about the course? Any suggestion, any question, any comment?
Sir, there was a question in the chat that did we miss session 5, which was on traditional knowledge?
Yeah. What was the question? Sorry?
Session 5, the slides are not there. It is the session 5, I think, as far as I can recall, is on traditional knowledge.
Oh, I missed the slide for session 5. Is that what you
Yes,
said?
how can we harness traditional knowledge for developing affordable and sustainable solutions?
Oh, I see. I'm sorry about that. That happened. Let me just check.
I think Praveen has mentioned that.
Let me check. Session 4. Session 5 is this one. Traditional knowledge. That's right. Or did I not show it? I'm sorry. So wait a minute. This is session 5, August 29. So yes, I'm sorry if I missed it. We will also look at the interface between the public, private, and common domain of resources and knowledge. Resource may be in public domain, knowledge may be in private domain. I'm a healer. I know about the use of that tree which grows on the common land. Yes, Sutapa. Sutapa, go ahead.
Good evening, sir. So slide number 8 also, we haven't seen slide number 8, sir.
Let me see. Is it
But
7?
you have the outline with you, isn't it? If you
I will send it over to you.
Yes, but you.
Okay. You are right. You are right. 8 is learning from nature. Sudapa, thank you. Learning from nature.
Thank you, sir.
How it happened, and common people. So we will talk about biomimicry. We will also talk about Shodhyatra. We have walked in every state of the country more than once. Summer we go to hot places, winter we go to cold places, and there's also a course, a walking course at IMA, where I take 35 students to Himalaya. And this year we are going from 2nd September to 8th in Sikkim. So yes, we will share insights from that process. And why voluntary suffering? Voluntary suffering is an important step to make us develop authenticity in our professional and personal life. When we suffer, as the people for whom we are working suffer, then the gap between our understanding and that of theirs gets reduced, and our mind starts working differently, and we are able to think of many solutions that we otherwise would not. So thank you for pointing out these slips. Sorry about that. Any other comment or question, please?
Good evening, sir.
Any suggestion? Yes, Anirban. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, sir. Good evening. I'm from CSR CMA. I was just curious to know, like, the final project synopsis will be based on the discussion which will be done in the classes, or like the problem statements will be found out during the classes, or a student is free to select any of the problem statement which he feels like goes along the norms of the class.
You see, yes, when you send your synopsis, when you will fill up your topic in the spreadsheet and we will discuss in the class, in some cases, and I must warn you now, in some cases, if you are going to do the same thing that you do in the lab anyway, then we will discourage you.
No, I'm not saying. I'm saying that
what I'm saying. Sorry, let me complete. That there are two aspects of it. One is that you are first of all free to decide the problem. That is very clear. All of you are free. However, either through mail exchange or through bilateral exchange, we can also have separate. We can fix time and talk whenever some of you want to discuss together. That's not a problem. We will try to be available to you. With this, notwithstanding the constraint of my other classes and Anamika's other sessions, but we will be accessible to you to discuss the problem if you wish to discuss, which may not have come up in the class, but which you wish to address. To give an example, last year from CSIO, which is a lab similar to CMERI, Durgapur, there were students who did not choose, I think 4 of them or 3 of them, did not choose a problem dealing with their discipline, that is instrumentation or design. Instead, they chose a problem of mental health. And they convinced us that, sir, it's a very serious problem among the student community and young people, and we really want to understand and see if we can provide some solution. And I remember there were some students from MTech also, and since both the institutions are involved in Chandigarh, they tried to collaborate. So sometimes it is possible that you might choose a problem beyond your discipline, and we will be very open. Yes, you will get the slides of this. This will be shared. We will share with you the slides of the day. We will also, where the link of the folders are available. You already have got outline. I assume all of you have got outline. So whatever I have shared is more or less from the outline that was sent to you on 25th, I think. So, but if you have missed it, please let me know in the chat if some of you have not got it, and we will send it to you. But yes, outline you have got. So the presentation is a summary of the outline, but we will share it also. Anybody else? Any other comment, please? Any other question? Your excitement, your enthusiasm is very vital.
Good evening, sir.
Papa, we will send it again. Those of you who have missed, either your email may have been missed from the earlier list. We have a list of 692 students with us from ACSIR that we have got. Ashwini has sent us. So we will send to all the 692 students, of whom about half are present, a little less than half are present today. We will send to them all. Yes, we will send it outline to everybody. Not a problem. Any other comment or question before we proceed? We will have a break at 6:40 for 15 to 20 minutes so that you can relax and have a cup of tea or stand up or do some exercises, have some snack. And then after 20 minutes, we'll meet again at 7, and then Anamika will take over, and I will join later. Yes, Safia, you wanted to say something?
Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
This is Afia Mehraj from CSI Sanat Nagar, sir. Sir, indeed, it was a great speech to listen to from last half an hour. Actually, we are facing too many difficulties across the globe. So, as you mentioned, like we can choose any topic that is outside our research area. Fine, sir. So,
Yes.
but now there is one question in my mind. For example, there are various things which are happening related to water pollution, to child labor, or the aspects which are governing the world at a large. Is it necessary that we will take the things which are happening only in the field of science? Can we go beyond the science and think something innovative or new, sir?
My suggestion is that a broad purpose is to use science and technology for addressing the unmet social needs. So to give you an example, just none of you are from medical science, but some of you have studied physiology. And one question which I had asked in the first cohort as to why a practice that many of you have observed in your families, that when an infant child faces a problem in the stomach, the mother or grandmother would put asafoetida mixed, rubbed in water to the navel point, or sometimes nutmeg rubbed on a piece of stone, and that paste is put on the navel root. Now, we all know that the many drug delivery routes we have worked on, nasal route, oral route, patches on the skin, IV, so many other routes we have used. But there are not too many drugs which are delivered through naval route, even though in our society, we have this, I will come to you, Deepamita. We have a need to look at some of these practices. Now, this is obviously a problem of physiology, drug delivery, broadly linked, but may not be directly in your domain, but you can look at such problems. So my suggestion would be that remain linked to the science and technology and innovation, STI framework broadly, although solution may not be only available through science and technology. It may require some institutional changes, it may require some policy changes. But let's say if you want to work on reservation area or some other such area, that is not going to be very useful, at least from the focus of this course, because our purpose is, please appreciate, it is a broad area of CSIR 800, where CSIR is trying that the scholars develop a feel, empathy, samvedana for the problems of those whose needs remain unmet. That is the major driver of this course, that how do we become empathetic? हमारे दिल में संवेदना कैसे जागे? How हमको कैसे लगे कि जो दिक्कतें जो लोगों की रह गई हैं, अनछुई हुई, नहीं एड्रेस हो पाई, इनको हम सॉल्व कर पाए. So Safia, my request would be that we don't become too global, don't become too macro, and yes, in some cases you can go beyond a discipline, no doubt, but try to remain linked to science, technology, and innovation in whichever domain you want to.
Thank you, sir.
May I also add something, Professor?
Yeah, please go ahead. Go ahead.
We will like the research to be very action oriented so that we can have results to show your next batch. We can say that this is the legacy that we are building upon, and your seniors or your batchmates, whatever, they have done so much of work. So it will give us a sense of joy to us and to you as well. And we do the same thing at IMA as well. Professor Gupta will tell you that we make people do whatever is needed to make a project come live, right? So we are looking forward to such projects, which are very real life, which even if it is a small scale, but you implement, somewhere you get that sense of achievement.
Yeah, Deepamita, your question about something that you have done, I really don't have an idea of what you have done, but my suggestion is, and please take it in the spirit in which I'm making the suggestion, that sometimes certain students try to take up a problem of creating awareness in the community about something which is very well known, say HIV or some other such problem. Now, those projects are not very challenging. Many people are doing that. You may also do something in a few villages or one village, and it is not going to add much value, broadly speaking, from the learning point of view. Yes, in that community, you would have done some work, but that's it. So my suggestion will be, I leave it to you. If what you have done did not pose much challenge, then see whether you can make the part 2 of that a little more challenging and share with us, and then we can discuss it. So we are not expecting that you will do it just because it has to be done. You will do it because you believe that something worthwhile needs to be done using this course as a platform. That is the purpose. I hope I have answered your question, but otherwise we can talk. You can send a mail and then we can discuss it again. Anybody else wants to say before we will take 2-3 minutes more to clarify any other question that you have about logistics. But this point that Anamika made is a very good one, because we really wish that you bring about some change, some impact. Now, somebody benefits, somebody's life changes because of your project. Abhishek, yes, go ahead.
Yes, sir. Sir, I'm Abhishek from CSR MMT Bhubaneswar. Sir, I have a question that is there any need of field visit for this societal program?
Ideally, I would say yes, because how would you do a societal project if you don't interact with society? Now, there can be different kinds of field work. I remember your director in a meeting on ethical guidelines for traditional knowledge we had, which Vishwajanani had organized that meeting. And he had made a presentation on the knowledge of materials in various historical architectures and other materials that they were used, some of which we know about, some of which we don't know enough about. And he was trying to show that how the history of material science has not yet been properly studied. And therefore, then he gave examples of some of those materials which could have relevance for contemporary purpose. So if you wish to work on some materials, some biomaterials, for example, biopackaging, for example, one of the very serious problem of waste. And in case you are working, your interest is in developing some bioplastic or biomaterial which can be used for packaging, yes, that can be done in the lab, but some raw material may have to be obtained from the field in these cases. Or some of you want to use the silk of corn as a fiber mixed with certain kind of polymers to be made into a very low cost material, which even people in the villages can be for packing their things and selling it in the market. I mean, any such thing which you want to do in your lab using the insight, connection, problem, opportunity from the field will be much appreciated. Is that all right, Abhishek?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you for your suggestion and advice, sir.
Moiran Thum, how many in a group? Well, 3, 4. Exceptionally, in some cases, there were 5 also. But my suggestion is, in that case, divide the responsibilities among your members so that you can do a good job. Somebody will do the prior art search, somebody will look at the market research, somebody can do something else, somebody can do the potential user interview. If you're developing a solution and you want to know whether the people for whom you're developing a solution, what is their actual need? Do they really want the solution that you're developing, or they want something else? And if that requires some focus group discussion or some interviews with some people, by all means, some member can do that. So use your energy in the most potent manner. I would say 3 to 4 is ideal, but in exceptional cases, you can have more, one more, not a problem. Just convince yourself that there is not much free riding. You all, I've been teaching for 40 years, and Anamika has been teaching for a few years now. And we know that sometimes the larger the group, lesser is the intensity of involvement. So don't do that. Yes, Nikitra.
Yeah, good evening, sir. Thank you, sir. Sir, actually, I have just a small question. Like in continuation of the Anamika ma'am's encouragement towards the work for the directly benefit of the people of our society. So in that context, I would like to know, while we are supposed to, like, we are going to execute any field work and which is directly connected with of the need of the our people who may be somewhat some far with our, but okay, so in that during of the education, will we get any support kind of what's a technical mentor support and kind of financial also, because all the things is like, okay, I have some kind of project to work for the people, but if I don't have this kind of support, execution of this work I think would be little bit hurdle for that, like, yes, for any candidate. So
okay, let me give a suggestion. While institutionally there is no provision for financial support, but there is an exception. Jan is working in Jammu Kashmir, Sikkim, and West Sikkim, and
Nagaland,
and
Gujarat,
Nagaland, and also
Gujarat and Madhya Pradesh, like Chhattisgarh, are also possible.
right. Now, what we could do that if you need to work on some herbs, you want to extract and find out, let's say we got a traditional knowledge about some plant which can be used as a beverage or as a soup and is also having a lot of antioxidant and other properties. And you say, okay, we will analyze it and try to make it into a form, say either by making it a powder or essential oil or extract or something by which it can become more effective, then by all means, yes, we will facilitate that. We will bear the cost of sending that material to you. And in case it is not too far from your lab, and if one or two of you want to visit that place and it's possible, we will try to facilitate that. So those of you who want to use your lab to add value to the knowledge of people, we from our side will try to facilitate it. Anamika, is that all right?
Yes, sir, by all means.
Yes. So that we can do, Nikitra, to make your project meaningful, and also our goal of giving back to the people from whom we learn with value addition by scientists, scholars like you will also be met. So we can do something of that kind.
thank you very much, sir.
Yes. Any other question? Now we have 6:24. So it's time for us to have a break for how many minutes? 6:20. Or we can start the next part of the class and then take a break at 6:40. Is that right? Yeah. I think let us do that. For at least 15 minutes, we can have continue and then have a break. Is that all right with everybody?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes,
All
sir.
right.
Yes.
Just
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So thank you. So we will now discuss before I start this session, I want to show you one slide. Has anybody read this book? Anybody has read this book?
No, sir.
Nivedita.
Sorry?
No, sir.
No, sir.
Now, I'm going to play this game time and again. I will quiz you, I will ask you, and Anamika may do the same thing, not because we want to prove that we are smarter. No, that's not the reason. The reason is that in science and technology, to make a point that you can learn from anywhere, and sometimes you can learn from a situation which you don't expect to teach you that, to illustrate that point, we will have to bring out some examples. And what Dr. Sharon Mollem, who has spent his life in linking disease and life, found during the plague in Europe, that the healthy people succumb to the plague more than the sick people. And that's counterintuitive, isn't it? And why would that happen? And they found that the vector of the virus needed a particular enzyme which was available in the nasal fluid of healthy people in larger quantity than in the sick people. So sick people could not provide conditions for the vector to infect, and therefore were saved, and many of the healthy people died. Interestingly enough, after the plague, studies have shown that average longevity increased. Now, there may be two reasons. One, that a lot of people had died, millions of people died during that plague. Black plague, it is called in the history of Europe. And the resources, therefore, were available to lesser number of people who survived, and therefore they could eat better and have better nutrition, or the genes which were responsible for vulnerability to this disease were also responsible for certain other kinds of survival advantages. So while they were saved in this problem, but they could also then sustain many other processes, physiological processes. So this is very interesting, that it's a counterintuitive insight. And one of the things that we're going to expect from you is that you should surprise us. You should surprise us in every class, bring out some insight. Some of you should do that, at least, if not everybody. And then remaining who can't speak can put in the chat. So that the learning must be maximized in every session. And we should recognize that there are things that we had missed. And let's go further and see how that will happen. So this is a picture was taken by Anamika from Thor Lake, not too far from Ahmedabad, about 40-50 kilometers. And I like this picture because, as you can see, all these ducks are going in one direction, and this one is not. Just now, as I gave you example of survival of the sickest, why is this duck choosing to be deviant, choosing to be a pioneer, choosing to be an adventurer, choosing to be an explorer? Many of us get constrained by what will our colleagues say. लोग क्या कहेंगे? अरे वो कहेंगे ये तो कहने दो ना उनको. How does it matter to us what will people say? We must have the courage of conviction to do what we want to do, to research what we want to research, and not follow the herd mentality, and choose a problem that needs to be researched and not that is easy to research. So, an eye for oddity, and keep looking for an eye, keep looking for an oddity in your data, in your observations, in your perceptions, so that you can see something that others have missed. And what will it do? It will unfreeze the flights of imagination. It will give us fertilizer it will fertilize our imagination. It will give us ways of thinking which we might otherwise not be capable of. In fact, it is advised generally that at least one paper every day we should read in a discipline other than our own area of specialization. So if you're a chemist, read a paper in physics or in languages or in linguistics or whatever, other one subject, other than one paper, other than what your field is, to create synaptic links in the brain in those aspects, those parts of the brain which deal with those two different domains or two different provocations of different kinds of knowledge system. So it's very important that even neurobiologically people have tried to argue the diversity of food, feed, perception, and readings fertilize our imagination. And I'm saying that as an exercise, you can try for a week, read one paper daily of a discipline other than yours, of subject of interest, of course, to you, and then see whether you are able to see more oddity, or you're able to observe things that otherwise you were going to miss. And it will help. It will help science, it will help your research, it will help your sensitivity to the social phenomena around us. Now, what is our goal? Our goal is that when you surprise us, how can you surprise us? You can surprise us by looking at counterintuitive insights. So let me tell you a story. Plague eye story I told you, but I'd like to tell you about milk. Now in Andhra Pradesh, some of you are from Andhra Pradesh. Anybody whose family grows tobacco in Andhra? Any student?
I'm from Andhra, but not the place tobacco growing reason.
Anybody else?
I like Andhra biryani, sir, very much.
All right. Now what they do, there's one of the practices, when they transplant the tobacco seedlings, they put a pot of milk near them. And after transplanting seedling, they put their hands, they put them in the milk and then transplant again. The belief is that if one of the seedlings transplanted earlier had a virus, TMV, tobacco mosaic virus, then the spores might infect the other healthy seedling also, and milk is supposed to. In Gujarat, people pour milk on the hooves of the cattle, which are affected by foot and mouth disease. When I was a child, long time ago, in the 50s, I had a pain in my ear, and landlady put her breast milk in my ear. So I shared these three observations in the conference on plant physiology and biochemistry at Cochin. Dr. Sinha used to be at that time the president of the society. He invited me. Meeting focus was on drought, and I talked about. He said, "We only talk about plant and water, but you work with people, so bring us the connection between plant and people, which we miss, and we will deal with the water and the plant." So I talked about that, and then I mentioned this example, and I said, "Can somebody tell me what is the connection between the three things?" And one postdoc, at that time he was a doctoral student, later he became postdoc at C at Columbia, Dattananda. He came to me at tea time and said, "Sir, it's possible that when the protein coat is cut by a protease, the RNase enzyme could possibly be inactivating both these viruses, foot and mouth and TMV, or type 2 RNA virus. Maybe that is the process of inactivation." This was a hypothesis. Interestingly enough, in the state of Manitoba, Ontario, Canada, Department of Agriculture has put an advisory on their website, which says, and let me show you that, it says that milk is as good as any other means of cleaning your garden tools and other means for controlling virus in roses and other plants. Why would they do that? Because they have found empirically this to be the most effective way of Department of Agriculture. So this is, one state has put in their website use of milk for viral control. And this practice exists in our country. We have not done it. So I'm asking a question. What is the reason? Why do we miss such connections which are possible? Just here, this is the one that I wanted to show you. Milk, let me show this. And I would like more such examples that you will bring. So here it is, milk as a management tool for viral disease. Did any one of you know about the role of milk in viral disease control? Anybody from biological science? Yes or no?
No, sir.
I'm giving you an example. The reason I'm giving this example is that I want to tell you that when we talk about working on people's knowledge, community knowledge, idea is not to take you backward. Idea is to have world quality science, the best possible science that we need to develop in our experimental work, in our doctoral research. And at the same time, extremely affordable solution. And in this case, the lead came from our own people, but we ignored it. Our Department of Agriculture or Ministry of Agriculture does not give this advice. Knowing fully well that there is no chemical control, that's what they're saying. There are currently no available chemicals for controlling viral disease in affected plant. But then they're saying that this seems to work. And they have documented it from 1930s. And they're given practical implications. 2005 was this information put on the website. Which website? Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs, Ontario. So it is possible that you might observe something around you in your farm, in your workshop, talking to the gardener, talking to the lab attendant, talking to the mali, talking to the vendor, talking to your parents. Yes, Asmita. Asmita, you wanted to say something, please? Did you raise your hand? Safia, I would appreciate if since you know about this subject, Sravanya, I will just come to you. And if you can make a short presentation in one of the sessions, whichever session you wish to do that, on both of you, Ashwini Bhoite and Safia Mehraj, maybe both of you can work together and make a short presentation on science of what we are talking about. Give us a scientific explanation. And then tell us what should we do as a strategy to encourage more of our students. And Pratik, you too, maybe three of you, work together. Pratik, Ashwini, and Safia, please work together if you wish to, or you can make few slides separately as you wish. I would encourage you to work together so that you can discuss with each other and argue about possible hypotheses and debate, and then maybe you can give contending hypotheses. You don't have to convert to a same solution. You can have multiple explanations. But I tell you, I have found postdoctoral students in Australia working on this problem. And we did a review, Dr. Chari at CTRI long time ago in Andhra Pradesh had done work on, written a review, which we published in Honeybee newsletter. So I've been interested in the subject for a long time, but for some reason, and I have mentioned this in the last two cohorts, but I would wish some of you at least to take up a small experiment and develop a solution, low-cost solution, so that people can deal with this. You know, you spray the milk on leaf curl or in tomato, and you will find that the new leaves which come are not having the leaf curl anymore. So it does work against various kinds of viruses, as one of you mentioned, and I agree with you. The question is, what is the mode of action? And how much dilution can we do in the milk so that it still remains active? Is it boiled milk is better, or the raw milk is better? Cow's milk is better, buffalo's milk is better, goat milk is better? I mean, is there a difference in different milks, different kinds of milk? What degree of dilution so that we can reduce the cost, etc., etc. How many times should I spray it, etc. Because viral diseases take a heavy toll of our crops. So this is just an example. Yes, Savanya, you were saying something. Please go ahead.
Good evening, sir. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Yeah, I'm Shravanya from CSR NCL Pune, sir.
Yes.
Actually, this is another example, sir. Whatever you have given, like 3 examples for milk. I am also basically from Andhra, and we used to have conjunctivitis disease for eyes. And for that purpose also, whenever we used to get like the Bombay eyes, we used to have the breast milk in our eyes so that it will be cured very quickly also. And this is a natural therapy for the Bombay eyes also. So this is also one of the example what you have given us for this.
But Savanya, I'm curious. I mean, I have, as I told you, in my childhood, I E and D, as you know, are connected. So
Not
I had
only
it.
in the childhood, sir, we are using still now if we get the
But
conjunctive.
the question is, why wouldn't we find science of it? And why wouldn't we give this as an advisory for poor people who can't have any other, they can't afford any other medicine? They have this impact. Bega, please. Why wouldn't we tell people that it is absolutely state-of-art solution? Don't hesitate in using it. And we have figured out in our lab, BSL-3 facility for pathogenic cases, you can use many of NCL has a very good facility, and you can show what is the chemistry of this, what's the biochemistry. So I would request some of you to really talk to your colleagues, talk to your friends, and see if a small review could be written on this and publish it. Write a blog on it, publish it. I will share it widely so that the scholars and the policymakers know that our students are going to change the way solutions will emerge in future. And the perception of CSIR that it is, of course, many of the problems have been solved by CSIR, but it can solve many more problems and this is a DIY solution. Solution exists, science doesn't. If you give science, people's faith will increase, isn't it, Shavanya? That is the point.
Yes, sir, yes.
I think that
Actually, there should be more research on this.
We don't want people to do it because grandmother has done it. We also want them to do it because that's the right thing to do. That is the scientifically accurate thing to do. That is the best possible solution that is there under the circumstances. If they know that this is better than any other medicine, they will not hesitate in using it. And younger people are more curious. They are fortunately becoming more science-minded. They want evidence. They want information, as you know. So many of you, when you go to doctor, after coming back from doctor, you do search on those medicines the doctor advises. I mean, we are not supposed to do that, but we do it because we want to know more about what these medicines are going to do to our body, isn't it? So this is an emerging attitude among the young people, and it's not bad that we want to know more about what we're doing, why we are doing. It's a good way of increasing curiosity. But in this case, it will be very useful if we also found out the science of it. So friends, I will stop here. We'll take a break of 17 minutes. We'll meet at 7, refresh yourself, and then 7 o'clock, we'll start again. Thank you. See you. Can stop the recording, and then we can start again. We are going to stop the session because we are also YouTubing it for those connections. So let's take a break for 20 minutes. 20 minutes. We meet at 7 again. Anamika, can we stop the YouTube?
For YouTube, I think that will be difficult, but the recording can be stopped.
Okay. All right, that's fine. So YouTube, all those who are looking at the class on YouTube, please remember that we are going to have 17 minutes break now. So you will not hear anything for 17 minutes, don't mind. And at 7 o'clock, join us again. Those of you who are not able to attend the class because of poor connection, but are looking at this or listening to the session on YouTube. Thank you. Welcome back. I hope most of you are back. Please switch on your videos if you are around so that we have some faces to see. It is always good to look at the faces when we are talking. Otherwise, I'm not sure whether you're there or not. So for a minute, maybe you can switch on your videos, all of you. Yoshit, Saurav, please do that, all of you. So friends, we will now look at some of the ways in which we have discovered or we have tried to discover the grassroots innovations and also unmet needs. So we do show the yatras, as I mentioned. We walk in different parts of the country and walk for a week and look at how people solve the problems. I'll give you one example. I'd gone for the Naduma Memorial Lecture at CLRI 2 years ago. And one of the practice we came across during Shodhyatra in Ladakh in 2011 was that we were in a valley and there was no way for any other transport to reach there except if some helicopter comes and picks up the sick people. Otherwise, they were in a valley which had no route except walking across the passes in the mountain. So we were talking to them that if you get cut and wound or something, how do you heal? So one of the committee members opened a box and showed us a dried layers of some material which he had kept. And this was nothing but the collagen below the skin when they cut the animals and use them as a meat. Under the skin, they have collagen, which they take it out, dry it, and use it as a dressing material for cotton. This was 2011. In 2019, Vinu Vijayan publishes a paper along with others from CLRI, where they look at collagenous cream composition for application and healing of chronic wounds. Now, 8 years. I assume that they started to work in 3-4 years ago. But if we had located this knowledge 10 years ago, 15 years ago, or 20 years ago, we would have had a scholar working on this problem much earlier. So I just wanted to give an example that many times we find that our labs are indeed developing some very state-of-the-art solutions, building upon the knowledge. But many times these people are not acknowledged. The benefits may not go back to these people whose knowledge we have used. We may not acknowledge them as author of our paper, etc., etc. They become nameless, faceless. So this is one area where I would like all of you to realize that when we use knowledge, even of a parent or grandparent or anybody, cite them, use their name with respect and acknowledgement. It would not do anything to them, but you will feel good about it because that is the ethics of knowledge economy. So please take care of that. So what Honeybee Network is trying to do, a nameless, faceless person comes in contact with the network, gets an identity. This is what we've been doing for 34, 35 years, giving voice, visibility, and velocity to the creative and innovative people. And we'll discuss that in the fourth session in more detail, but essentially trying to tell that network is the crux of the matter. I will skip these 2-3 slides. I will discuss them later. But this I wanted to mention, that when we want to develop inclusive innovations, we want to develop solutions which are addressing the problem of excluded spaces, the forest, the tribal communities, the mountains, the desert, the flood-prone regions which are risky, where climatic fluctuations are intense, and therefore market forces are weak. State is also weak there. Even government agencies don't work very well. Certain sectors, for example, handloom, I think much great has happened in the technology of weaving, or dyeing for that matter, vegetable dyes. In seasons, flood, nowadays, large part of India has a flood. Now, how do you reach milk to the children or medicines to the sick people during the flood? Not everybody can afford a boat, so we need to find solutions for that. Social segments, certain social segments we all know get excluded because of the deep biases that we have. skills are ignored. And sometimes the guidelines of the government are such that the governance itself is biased against the low population density region. So inclusive innovation will mean to overcome all the 6 factors of exclusion, or as many of them. Yes, Ashwini? So let me give you a small example. Bad design, good intention. So this is a mechanical, students can see this point much clearly. There's a hand pump, you're trying to drink water. Obviously, your hand cannot hold all the water. The diameter of the pipe is a little more. Hand cannot hold, so water is spilling up. So what did two innovators do? So Ambu Sharma and Agrawal, one of the students in my class, both of them together thought about this idea. And then Yusuf and Vishwakarma tried to implement it. 100 rupee retrofitting solution, one tap, one tap for filling drinking, the other one for filling bucket. And we are able to now solve the problem very easily. If still some water spills over, then you are making it collect in a pit where animals can drink. So when you talk about inclusivity not just of human beings, but also non-human beings. Priyanka, did you want to say something? Go ahead. Similarly, these are motorcycle-based machines. It is called Saurashtra. Tens of thousands of these are used every year. This is for cotton field. It can move on the field. This is what did they do? Those of you who are engineers would know that when you have to increase the torque, you have to reduce the RPM. So they used a flywheel here from 3,200 RPM revolution per minute. They brought it down to 1,200, increase the torque so that it helps in flying and doing the beating and other activities. This is an example where in China, a farmer converted a boat into a motor. So he crossed the boat, lake, and then moved to the market. In Kerala, Vinod tried to convert a car into boat, which is more costly. They had the more frugal end of the problem. But there are some solutions. Gopal Bhai, we say, more than 20 years ago, developed a cycle-based plow. Chinese also developed that. So the question is that there are some solutions, problems for which low-cost solutions are being tried. Around the world, people are looking for them. And that's what Honeybee Network is trying to do, to cross-pollinate these ideas. I'll give you 2 examples from the students like you. Ravi was a student, PhD student at NDRI. He got this award. And this was $25,000. He got it in Brazil as a drug. Yeah. What did he do? When you take the milk from the animal, you milk the animal's cow or buffalo, and the pail, the bucket that you use, he made it cold. The surface of the bucket he attached his device so that it becomes a phase change material was used. So it became cold, and milk will remain in that bucket without having bacterial contamination till the van comes to collect the milk. Very good idea. And they were from ISC, did something remarkable. You know that there are about 50,000 people who need heart transplant in our country. Hardly 200 people get every year. One of the reasons is that today we get only about 2 to 3 hours of transportation of heart in the conventional technology. What he has done, he has developed a light box where the heart can remain functional for 6 hours. These are his guides, and they were the PhD student who did that. He got a lot of awards. And those of you who want to see the YouTube connection, you can see how this problem has been solved. So I'm saying that some of the scholars like you will address problems and we give award for them. Now I will show you a small video. And tell me if you get the sound. Are you getting the sound? Are you getting the sound?
Yes, sir.
Yes, yes.
Yes, sir.
So the video is not being
Sir, video sound we cannot hear. We can hear
Okay,
your voice.
let me let me. Okay. Let me. Choose video setting. Let me try.
Should I share?
No, I'm doing that. Share sound. Now it will come. Now it will come. Please tell me if you get it.
For the past 5 years, I've been investigating this question of
Yes,
where
audible.
ideas come from. It's the kind of problem I think all of us are intrinsically interested in. We want to be more creative. We want to come up with better ideas. We want our organizations to be more innovative. I've looked at this problem from an environmental perspective. What are the spaces that have historically led to unusual rates of creativity and innovation? And what I've found in all of these systems, there are these recurring patterns that you see again and again that are crucial to creating environments that are unusually innovative. One pattern I call the slow hunch, that breakthrough ideas almost never come in a moment of great insight, in a sudden stroke of inspiration. Most important ideas take a long time to evolve, and they spend a long time dormant in the background. It isn't until the idea has had 2 or 3 years, sometimes 10 or 20 years to mature, that it suddenly becomes accessible to you and useful to you in a certain way. And this is partially because good ideas normally come from the collision between smaller hunches, so that they form something bigger than themselves. So you see a lot in the history of innovation, cases of someone who has half of an idea. There's a great story about the invention of the World Wide Web in Tim Berners-Lee. This is a project that Berners-Lee worked on for 10 years. But when he started, he didn't have a full vision for this new medium he was going to invent. He started working on one project as a side project to help him organize his own data. He scrapped that after a couple years, and he started working on another thing. And only after about 10 years did the full vision of the World Wide Web come into being. That is, more often than not, how ideas happen. They need time to incubate, and they spend a lot of time in this partial hunch form. The other thing that's important when you think about ideas this way is that when ideas take form in this hunch state, they need to collide with other hunches. Oftentimes, the thing that turns a hunch into a real breakthrough is another hunch that's lurking in somebody else's mind. And you have to figure out a way to create systems that allow those hunches to come together and turn into something bigger than the sum of their parts. That's why, for instance, the coffee house in the age of the Enlightenment, or the Parisian salons of modernism, were such engines of creativity, because they created a space where ideas could mingle and swap and create new forms. When you look at the problem of innovation from this perspective, it sheds a lot of important light on the debate we've been having recently about what the internet is doing to our brains. Are we getting overwhelmed with an always connected, multitasking lifestyle? And is that going to lead to less sophisticated thoughts as we move away from the slower, deeper, contemplative state of reading, for instance? Obviously, I'm a big fan of reading, but I think it's important to remember that the great driver of scientific innovation and technological innovation has been the historic increase in connectivity and our ability to reach out and exchange ideas with other people, and to borrow other people's hunches and combine them with our hunches and turn them into something new. That really has, I think, been, more than anything else, the primary engine of creativity and innovation over the last 600 or 700 years. And so, yes, it's true we're more distracted. But what has happened that is really miraculous and marvelous over the last 15 years is that we have so many new ways to connect and so many new ways to reach out and find other people who have that missing piece that will complete the idea we're working on, or to stumble serendipitously across some amazing new piece of information that we can use to build and improve our own ideas. That's the real lesson of where good ideas come from, that chance favors the connected mind.
So as you can see, now I will show you an illustration of just what happened a few minutes ago in our class. And I will show you a paper where things that you mentioned about the possible reason for milk to work are actually, let me bring out that paper just a minute. Here it is. So let me first show you the title, and then you will see what are we talking about. And 7 reasons, out of 7 reasons that many of you mentioned. Are you able to see that now? Yes? So 7 things that you mentioned. Now, can you imagine a paper came in 21, bovine coronavirus immune milk against COVID-19. Now, what is important is something that I want you to see in this paragraph, that the bovine milk and colostrum contain high level of bioactive components, including growth factors like immunoglobulin 1. You mentioned that. Lactoperoxidase, that was not mentioned, but lysozymes, lactoferrins, cytokines, nucleosides, and so on, oligosaccharides. And some of you mentioned some other protein, maybe the casein in the milk also could be inhibitor. So the point I'm saying is that if 6, 7 of you who mentioned in the chat different possible hypotheses for milk viral control could sit together, could discuss it online, could discuss in WhatsApp group or whatever, and argue with each other, probably we have a good experimental design emerging from what is happening in a state of art, what is happening in your mind, and a good solution can emerge. And maybe then we can find out, as I said, milk at different stages of lactation cycle, as it was just now mentioned that colostrum milk has a little more. We know that it increases immunity, but does it also help in controlling viral diseases? Maybe it does. So this is an example how connection across boundaries. Now, obviously, the 6 points that you mentioned in the chat about what are the possible reasons. Let me see here. Some of you mentioned raw milk. Some of you mentioned about different reasons. And what I'm saying is white blood cells, one of you mentioned. Somebody mentioned some other protein. Now, is it possible that we can put these together? That is the power of collaborative thinking. That is the power of going beyond one's domain boundary. So I'll just take 2-3 minutes more before I hand over to Anamika for and go further. So I just wanted you to look at now what are the ways in which we are responding to the unmet need. One is, of course, we have we take an existing solution and we repurpose it. So many drugs are repurposed for certain ends for which they were not intended. So that could be one model. We can have a fixed solution, we try to combine. Sometimes we have paradoxical thinking. We look at contradictory positions, and through contradictions, we try to arrive at a solution. Sometimes we give building blocks to people, and people then put them together and develop a solution. So there are different ways in which need can be met. It is very important that, as I said earlier, you look at the databases that we have, and please try that sometime affordability and accuracy can be traded off. Many vaccines which were permitted did not have efficacy more than 80% to begin with. And they were given emergency use authorization. 20% margin in some cases, 85% accuracy. So in the normal circumstances, we wouldn't have allowed anything less than 95% or 99%. In the epidemic, we didn't have better solutions, so we did. So maybe it is a case for not letting accuracy become enemy of affordability. There is a case where sometimes from a 0 level of efficiency, that means we have no solution, to a solution which is 80% accurate, 75% effective. is worthwhile to go further. Last example, and then we will move to what Anamika will present, and then if time permits, I'll come back. Gandhiji faced a problem in 1929. 24th July 1929, he gave a challenge award, because 1920 he asked Vinoba Bhave, what is the efficiency of a spinning wheel? So he gave an example of how much earning they will make. And with that earning, there was no way poverty would have been eliminated. So Gandhi said, let us try to give a competition, announce a competition. So in 25, he announced a competition. 5-6 entries came, 5,000 rupees was the award money. Problem was not solved. In 1929, he got exasperated and he said, okay, this time the award will be 7,700 pounds, which is about 1 lakh rupees at that time. Today, it may be 10 crores. And I would like to have a design, person can patent, but if he wants award money, he must make it open source, etc. Rajgopalachari was one among the member of the jury committee. And he said, if jury cannot reach a conclusion, I will. And you know what happened? In 1930, 31, when he was in Varda jail, he was using the peti charkha, you know, the horizontal one, which is developed in 3 years. So challenge awards, he gave a challenge. Anybody, anywhere in the world could offer a solution to the problem that he had posed. Beautiful parameters of, I will show you a little later after Anamika presents her slides. But what I'm saying is that challenge award is one method through which we can discover, we can uncover possible solutions from people who we may not have in our peer group. So we need to go to use different methodologies by which we can access ideas. And this can include even children, as you will see in a while later. Anamika, would you start now? Anamika? Anamika, are you
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes. So I will just start it with a story that I have heard from Professor, I think many times. It's a Zen story. So there's a disciple who goes to Buddha and says, I heard that you are a very learned and a very knowledgeable person. Please take me as a disciple. I also want to learn from you. Buddha said, okay, come after 10 days. He again went. And this time again, Buddha said that come after a few more days. He went after 2 weeks, 3 weeks. And then he was really pissed off. That why are you not taking me as a disciple? So what the master, Buddha, what he does is he takes a cup of tea, or you can say water, whatever it was, and asks the disciple to pour more water into it, right? And the moment the disciple poured more water into it, it overflowed. And he then said, so, and the student actually realized that whenever he was coming, he was so opinionated, but so full of knowledge that he did not have space to imbibe more knowledge. So my session, like our session now, starts with this beautiful story. It has been, I mean, it's a very, very old story, and I've heard from Professor Gupta for so many times. It is just, now I use it to define the context in which the discussion will emerge. How easy or difficult or important is it to unlearn? Are you getting me? I mean, from each of you, you belong to different institutions, the best of the institutions that our country has. You might have, or what might have not, you are really experts in your field, your professors are there, and you have really worked hard to reach here. So there is very little where we can add value. Maybe in your technological knowledge or whatever your art is, whatever your science is, you will know much better than most of us maybe. But why are we kind of wasting your time here? Let us see if we can make this wasting of time a little more useful for you. Whenever we see, like Professor was saying about Shodhyatra, when we go to different villages, we go to community, he said that during the summer months, we go to the hottest places, during the cooler months or the winters, we go to the cooler places. And so that people do not feel that we are just tourists, we have come to learn, right? But it is also to bring us to our roots and meet people who will say, look, here is something that I have to teach, right? So we go there to learn from them. We seek knowledge from them at their doorstep. And yes, I understand, like few people were saying, you're saying that a lot of superstitions also come. They are kind of bundled into traditional knowledge and things like that. But as science students, you can always make that differentiation, isn't it? But that doesn't mean that we also do not appreciate what is appreciable, what is still relevant, what science they have. Maybe they do not know the science, and the technology has just, the technology has evolved over maybe thousands of years ago. Now it is our turn to see if we can explain their science. Now I will share a couple of slides. I just have 2 or 3 slides. It won't be much work for you, but give me a moment. Yes. Yes, learning to unlearn. Do you think it is easy or difficult? Well, what is your take about unlearning? Learning to समझ में आता है. We are like learning for years now. The moment you start, you take birth, you start learning few things. Your cognitive skills get enhanced. You learn something from your parents, from your society, then schools, then your of course your colleges and all. Now, what do you think unlearn means? Does it mean if you have learned ABCD or maybe XYZ, I'm asking you to unlearn ABCD? Is it so? Is there an answer? Everybody is awake, right? You guys are
No,
awake.
ma'am, it's not.
Yes. So what do you mean? What do you mean?
Ma'am, when you are saying here, we need to learn how to unlearn. Then it's basically when we're approaching a problem, we shouldn't have any sort of preemptive opinion in our head towards approaching the problem, because that makes our acceptance decrease to some extent.
Okay. So now tell me, how easy is it to unlearn? Or how difficult is it to unlearn?
It's difficult if we think like we go with an approach like we already know it, and we try to solve with that approach. And sometimes it's difficult because the solutions are not always within that set of knowledge which we have. Probably we need to learn something, but because of that, like that thought rigidness, we usually deny to learn, and a lot of opportunities sway away in that way. Sorry.
So now tell me one thing, if you have like unlearned something, what do you do with the knowledge that you already know?
We can use it for a comparative study, like what we know and what we are learning like recently, and what we have, we can compare it. We basically use it as a comparative study.
Or
Like
they can
knowledge.
help you to maybe enlarge your understanding canvas. So this is also a possible way. There are 10 other possible ways to tackle this, which we can learn. Let me share a small experiment with you. I don't know if you can.
Hey, it's me, Destin. Welcome back to.
Can you hear the sound?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Okay.
Smarter every day. You've heard people say it's just like riding a bike, meaning it's really easy and you can't forget how to do it, right? But I did something. that damaged my mind. It happened on the streets of Amsterdam, and I got really scared, honestly. I can't ride a bike.
Are you all aware of this experiment?
Yes, ma'am. I have seen
ma'am.
it
No,
in
ma'am.
YouTube
No,
itself.
ma'am.
No, ma'am, we haven't seen.
ठीक है,
Yes, ma'am.
जिसने भी
Yes, ma'am.
या जिसने नहीं जिसने देखा है वो कृपया शांत रहे, जिसने नहीं देखा है वो पहले देख ले, and then we will have a small discussion on this. Okay?
Sure, ma'am. Sure.
Like you can't anymore. Before I show you the video of what happened, I need to tell you the backstory. Like many 6-year-olds with a MacGyver mullet, I learned how to ride a bike when I was really young. I had learned a life skill and I was really proud of it. Everything changed though when my friend Barney called me 25 years later. Where I work, the welders are geniuses and they like to play jokes on the engineers. He had a challenge for me. He had built a special bicycle and he wanted me to try to ride it. He had only changed one thing. When you turn the handlebar to the left, the wheel goes to the right. When you turn it to the right, the wheel goes to the left. I thought this would be easy, so I hopped on the bike ready to demonstrate how quickly I could conquer this. And here he is, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Justin Sandlin. First attempt riding the bicycle. All right. So, faster I go, faster. Yeah, I couldn't do it. You can see that I'm laughing, but I'm actually really frustrated. In this moment, I had a really deep revelation. My thinking was in a rut. This bike revealed a very deep truth to me. I had the knowledge of how to operate the bike, but I did not have the understanding. Therefore, knowledge is not understanding. Look, I know what you're probably thinking. Destin's probably just an uncoordinated engineer and can't do it. But that's not the case at all. The algorithm that's associated with riding a bike in your brain is just that complicated. Think about it. Downwards force on the pedals, leaning your whole body, pulling and pushing the handlebars, gyroscopic precession in the wheels. Every single force is part of this algorithm. And if you change any one part, it affects the entire control system. I do not make definitive statements that often, but I'm telling you right now, you cannot ride this bicycle. You might think you can, but you can't. I know this because I'm often asked to speak at universities and conferences, and I take the bike with me. It's always the same. People think they're going to try some trick or they're just going to power through it. It doesn't work. Your brain cannot handle this. For instance, this guy, I offered him $200 just to ride this bike 10 feet across the stage. Everybody thought he could do it.
No, you didn't understand. You didn't understand. So, this way. All right, so, wherever you're at. Like that. No, you have to keep your feet on the ground. All right, so here we go. Like you guys start rolling at least. And go. Keep your feet on the pedal. Go. You know what yeah, come on.
Once you have a rigid way of thinking in your head, sometimes you cannot change that, even if you want to. So here's what I did. It was a personal challenge. I stayed out here in this driveway and I practiced about 5 minutes every day. My neighbors made fun of me. I had many wrecks, but after 8 months, this happened. One day I couldn't ride the bike and the next day I could. It was like I could feel some kind of pathway in my brain that was now unlocked. It was really weird though. It's like there's this trail in my brain, but if I wasn't paying close enough attention to it, my brain would easily lose that neural path and jump back onto the old road it was more familiar with. Any small distractions at all, like a cell phone ringing in my pocket, would instantly throw my brain back to the old control algorithm and I would wreck. But at least I could ride it. My son is the closest person to me genetically, and he's been riding a normal bike for 3 years. That's over half his life. I wanted to know how long it would take him to learn how to ride a backwards bike, so I told him if he learned how to ride a backwards bike, he could go with me to Australia and meet a real astronaut. Are you going to give up? Go ahead. This is how it starts. Look at this. This is such a big deal. Get up, you got it. Did you see his brain get it? So he, in how many weeks have we been doing this? 2 weeks? In 2 weeks, he did something that took me 8 months to do, which demonstrates that a child has more neuroplasticity, am I even saying that right, than an adult. It's clear from this experiment that children have a much more plastic brain than adults. That's why the best time to learn a language is when you're a young child. All right, today's bike log. I can ride smooth, I can ride fast, I'm thinking the experiment is over. Okay, now I'm in Amsterdam, a city that has more bicycles than people. The question is, can I ride a normal bike now?
Any guesses what he'll do?
He cannot ride it, man.
He cannot.
Why?
He learned something and he could not
His
able to
brain
do
is
that.
conditional to that particular bike.
It is conditional, but he has ridden a normal bike for all his life.
But ma'am, the
Yes, ma'am,
pathways
but
was already
it will take
changed.
time.
Let me give you a relatively different example, but like a similar example. Many of us, we do not have English as the first language, right?
Yes,
So when we are, maybe my mother tongue is Bengali, somebody's is Hindi, somebody's is Tamil. So when we learn English, do we forget Tamil or Bengali or Hindi or whatever our first language is?
No.
No, ma'am.
But then why is it happening? I want an answer by the end of this video.
I mean, I've spent all this time unlearning how to ride a bike. If I go back and try to ride a normal one, will my brain mess up? So I've tweeted a Smarter Everyday meetup, if you will, and I'm going to see if somebody brings a bicycle, and I'm going to try to ride a normal bike. It's backwards. This was one of the most frustrating moments of my life. I had ridden a normal bike since I was 6, but in this moment, I couldn't do it anymore. I had set out to prove that I could free my brain from a cognitive bias. But at this point, I'm pretty sure that all I proved is that I could only redesignate that bias. So what you're not seeing is just a group of people here looking at me, looking at the strange American that can't ride a bike because they think I'm dumb. But I'm actually 2 levels deep into this because I've learned and unlearned. All right. After 20 minutes of making a fool out of myself, suddenly my brain clicked back into the old algorithm. I can't explain it, but it happened in a very specific moment. I got it. I'm back. Oh, wait. I got it. Okay, there it is. There's the moment. Okay, I can ride a bike. I tried to explain this to the people around me, and they just didn't get it. They thought I was faking the previous 20 minutes, and I couldn't get anybody to believe me. That looked like I faked it, didn't it? Yeah, just a fake. You think I'm faking? You don't believe me. You think I'm lying, don't you? I'm not lying. I felt like the only person on the planet who had ever unlearned how to ride a bike, and I couldn't articulate it to anyone because everybody just knew that you can't forget how to ride a bike. So I learned 3 things from this experiment. I learned that welders are often smarter than engineers. I learned that knowledge does not equal understanding. And I learned that truth is truth, no matter what I think about it. So be very careful how you interpret things because you're looking at the world with a bias, whether you think you are or not. I'm destined to get smarter every day.
Okay, so now tell me why we do not forget our language when we are learning something else, some other language.
And the situations might compel the person to behave in a way. So after he gets used to the situation, the nerves fire in that way, probably.
Now, my question is, we also learn 2 languages or 3 languages together in the school, but we do not forget the other language. Why is it so when this person is learning bicycle and then unlearning because he's trying to use a different kind of bicycle where the handle goes into a completely different direction than the wheels, and then he took around 25 minutes to just get back to his original train of thoughts where he is able to ride the bicycle. But when we are learning languages, why it doesn't happen?
Ma'am, I'm not sure about it, but analytically, I believe like whenever we are learning some new language, and we are comparing the words or the entire vocabulary of the new language with the older ones for better grasp maybe. So basically, parallelly, both the things are operating in our mind. Like if Bengali is my mother tongue, then I'm learning some new word in English, then we always compare it with the already known Bengali term in our head. So that makes our memory probably more strong. So parallelly, both the things are operating. Though I don't know it
Because
for
we
sure.
are not leaving. So
No.
what is?
Ma'am, because since we are young.
Beauty of mother language, ma'am.
Yeah, no,
Even
yeah.
we dream in mother language only.
Yes, since from younger we used to speak our mother tongue, so we cannot forget it when we are adults.
Maybe because of the processing time.
But when you go abroad and you don't have people from speaking the same language, you often miss words, isn't it?
Yes.
Ma'am, I would like to point out something about even mother tongue also. If a person is not using their mother tongue for a long time, they can forget how to write it. For example, for me, it is like my mother tongue is Bengali. So there are specific alphabets. For example, like dha is there. So there, I have seen it in many Bengalis who don't practice it that much. It can go. The speaking does not go because somewhat you are just conversing with yourself, with your family members, with someone else. But if you completely shut that off for a long time, there are chances that you also might miss that thing. That experiment can be done, ma'am. That completely for 5 years, no mother tongue, not writing, not speaking, then we can have a proper conclusion. Because, ma'am, the same pathway is getting used for both. For
It's
him,
all
like
about balancing cognitive domain skills, man.
Yes. So do you agree that somehow the brain knows how to unlearn?
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
So
Yes,
what
yes,
is
ma'am.
it that makes us believe that we should hold on to our beliefs?
No, it can get updated anytime. So.
Ma'am, I want to point out one more thing.
Yes.
That during this cycling, we are just opposing the previous knowledge. But during the language, we are just going with that, learning the new thing, but we are not destroying the previous one. So these are two different things, I think.
Yes. So there are, so you know, in India we have left-hand driving, right? But in Europe and many Western countries, it's right-hand driving. So it is very obvious for people who come here for the first time, or when we drive there for the first time, we face these challenges, and after maybe a few minutes or a few hours, maybe we get used to it. So kind of brain, so that's what the person was saying, neuroplasticity. So the way our brain behaves can change depending upon the stimuli or the information we are feeding it. So it can be intrinsic, it can be extrinsic. Like somebody said that because we still converse with ourselves, right? So even when we are thinking, somebody said that we dream in our mother language, somebody says we still think in the language and then translate and things like that. So there can be intrinsic stimuli, and there can be extrinsic as well. Well, like for example, during because I was not like, it's a personal episode. I think in class 6 or so, when I was not speaking Bengali properly, and me and my cousin were in the same class. So our teacher brought us from the benches and made us sit just in front of a desk, so that for the next 4 or 5 years, we speak in Bengali in this, at least in the Bengali period. So that's an extrinsic stimuli that has happened, right? Isn't it?
yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
So now, why are we discussing learning to unlearn in a class which is meant for unmet needs and innovation? Why do you think it is important to understand innovation or to understand the unmet needs of society?
For the development of society as a whole, ma'am, simply.
Kaise? This is like a very what that subjective type answer ki kuch nahi aaya.
For example, if wireline phones have worked for thousands of years, like for example, I'm hypothesizing that wireline phones are working well. So why do we need wireless? Someone had to think out of that wired thought that, okay, this can also
That
be.
we are still communicating. So there is a common point.
Yes, ma'am. The same thing is getting, for example, even screen, even this Zoom thing, ma'am, this is also discovered. This is also a way of communication. But maybe in future, it might be hologramic. The whole room can be seen. So, ma'am, the same thing, the mode is communication. The application will be difficult in engineering and other ways.
someone or some person will develop. If they have the normal knowledge which everyone has, they will be limited. So in case
You
they
want
have
to
some.
remove the conditioning, isn't it?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Now, this is for both, true for both unmet needs. Like when Professor said that we will be working on unmet technological or society needs and also innovation. Because innovation happens when you address an unmet need. When we are telling you to document unmet needs, it just means that we are looking for an innovation because it is somewhere where there is still gap, where the society, the market, the institutions, the formal R&D, or anybody has still not reached, isn't it? So how do we find newer opportunities of innovating? And that can be possible. Somebody is drinking tea or something, but please switch off your mic if you can't share it with us. Okay, so for innovation, we need to, innovation will tell us, for innovation, we need to map what the existing gaps are. And the existing, for seeing the existing gaps, we cannot wear the same glasses through which we were seeing the world. We will have to change our perspective of for something, like it can be firsthand, where somebody very close or you yourself might come across some problem and you try to solve it. Sometimes it is maybe data driven, where you are seeing a large set of data and some patterns are emerging. So there are different ways in which you can find the unmet needs. So this is also regarding your projects. It can be a problem that you face, your family faces, people around you faces, animals face, or people who do not have anything to do with you, but you feel that your little intervention can change or make their life a little better. Okay, now we come to our last slide. Maybe we'll take 5-7 minutes and we will have a short round of Q&A. Okay, now this is taken from a paper from HPR. Would anybody like to explain this diagram, or should I go on? Should I continue?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
Please
ma'am.
continue.
Please,
Okay.
please.
So
Yes,
when we are trying to innovate or find innovative products, make something new, what we need to do is, first, either we are improving our mainstream use, like whatever technology you're making, you're working on, and you have a set of users for it. You kind of observe them more closely, or see the patterns, or see how you get your data, your inputs from them. In a different way, what you can do is you can see outliers, people or entities which are not directly your customers or your mainstream users, but you are kind of intrigued by the way things are being used. For example, for an example of grassroots innovation is a machine for sieving groundnut was used for cleaning beaches. Okay, because the mechanism is sieving. Now, somebody who was using it for ground uprooting, for separating the soil from the groundnut, maybe did not see its application, but somebody somewhere thought about it, came and bought the machine for using it as a sea beach cleaner. Right? Now, there can be, that is the demarcation from in the horizontal plane, right? And in the vertical plane, what you're seeing, that you kind of try to see more granularly, where you are focusing more on the lives and the way things are being used, the way your technology is being used, handled or mishandled, whatever it is. And sometimes you have to have a bird's eye view where you are seeing patterns. When you see granularity, you might miss on the patterns that emerge when you see the thing as a whole. It is like what professor calls Arjun versus Yudhishthir. अर्जुन जो है वो जिनको आंख दिखता था अपने वो चिड़िया के, और जब वो तीरंदाजी कर रहे थे, the Yudhishthir could see a more holistic view, the cosmos and the interrelationships. Now we'll take one by one, and I will share some examples but I want more examples from the class here. We start with microscope, where it is very simple, like you see the granularity and you see how your user is using your technology. For example, I remember when we were in France, I was professor and I were and the University of UTT in Tra, they had a room where they used to call volunteers, like elderly volunteers, to come and just live there. They had cameras all over, of course, with all the their permission and all. And the students used to study how the elderly lived or behaved or interacted with different gadgets, so that they could identify where the pain points are. Okay, now can you get with an example from your lab or from anybody else where you also use something or simulate something by using a kind of a more microscopic view? That's very easy, isn't it? I'm talking about a university lab where I saw this. You can tell me about any company which does that, which did that, some startup which came up by doing that.
Yeah, that's a good example. Foldscope is a good example where an Indian scholar at Stanford has used very simple mechanism to help children access microscope and print it and fold it and create it.
अपने भी आपके भी कुछ examples होंगे ना? One professor I shared, one professor shared.
Foldscope was shared by them on the chat. I just selected
Okay,
it.
sorry, I am not seeing the chat. Let me see.
Right.
Okay. So then we come to the next one, which is panorama, where you are trying to see a pattern when your mainstream users are using, and you see there are certain things that are emerging. So the data is speaking for itself. Like now this thing, it also becomes, if we don't pay attention to our technology and how it is evolving, it can become our competitor's advantage. The example होंगे ना, Amazon सब सो गए क्या? अभी 8 बज रहे, उठ जाओ.
No ma'am, no ma'am.
So Amazon ने क्या किया? When it was making this platform, it made the life of the user very nice. Okay, so we get discounts, we get multiple vendors to choose from, we get different deals, we get credit card offers, we get so many things. But in the meanwhile, what happened? The problem on the vendors remains somehow not very nicely addressed. What happened? Companies like Shopify came up, where you yourself can sell your products at your own terms. So the data said So when you look on the data, you get to realize, okay, this is the behavior of a set of user, and this is the kind of unmet need or unacknowledged gap that I can take advantage of. You being an innovator, you need to find something from which you can make business or your innovation, your technology, right? Any example coming from for this? Any example? किसी को नहीं समझ में आ रहा है क्या?
आवाज नहीं जा रहा. Hello.
Hello. Yes.
Yeah, ma'am. UPI examples from India. So.
What happened?
So now, if you see in that terms of view, so when earlier plastic cards were used to pay over the India, so it was charging so much. So what happened? So when UPI comes, so when that charge got omitted, so
yes, 2% was the charge. 2% of your transaction, which was used for small businesses.
Yeah, now it vanishes, and that's why the small business owners can also using the same technology which earlier the mainstream business owner were using.
Good
That's
example.
nice. Very good example. So should we come to telescope now? Okay. So can anybody guess what I'm going to say? Okay. So what happens? Telescope is जो हम लोग दूर से चंदा मामा देखते हैं, सितारे देखते हैं ना, where that is which is something not amongst us, extraterrestrial है, but we are still interested in studying those things. So these people are not our mainstream users. They are not people who will generally you will look for in your business, but they give you clues for a future market. The example that I give is, you know, the company which makes the handles for all those steel utensils. I'm forgetting the name. Something. So this handle, the polymer handle that was used was actually, it first came up for people who have arthritis or frozen shoulders. They could not hold the utensils properly, and that's why this invention came. But later this has cut across, and I think today all our households, each one of us will have utensil where those hardened polymers are used, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Now,
Yes, ma'am.
give me an example from your lab or from anybody else's or any other startup that you know.
Actually, it is said that even refrigerator was initially invented for the space for the people who are there in the space to preserve the food in the space. Generally, it later came to the household purposes. I mean, initially it was invented for the spacecraft purpose.
You know, the material of the crutches that are used by a polio person, the light material actually came from Dr. Kalam's DRDO lab. So it was.
Yes, ma'am. The metal was used in DRDO, and they used that to make stents in heart operations. So the cost was.
No, that is different. That is different. She's talking about the artificial limb.
Yes, the crutches that are used for polio support.
For that, no, not crutches, the artificial limb. So those were used by a particular polymer that was used to create that synthetic, not Jaipur foot. It was another one that DRDO had developed.
So there are many spillover technologies which maybe you make for one of your clients or anybody else, but you can license this out.
Repurpose it.
To repurpose it or license it out to civil society, other organizations or other people who can really make use of. There will be many technologies that your lab makes, and if you share it with people, I think there is no harm. If in case there is, these are for non-strategic uses.
Like fuse deposition modelings and all. I mean, initially they were meant for prototyping. Now they are improved to the sports and biomedical applications and
Correct,
many applications. Like the 3D printing, you
Yes.
popularly know them as.
So now that brings us to the last one, kaleidoscope. You know kaleidoscope? वो बचपन में वो चूड़ी देखते थे, याद है? You have different mirrors and you can see patterns, distant objects. So now I have given the example for all three. I want the fourth one to for one of you to take up and give an example. But you are seeing things as an aggregate. You are seeing pattern as an aggregate, and these patterns are from users which are not your main users. But because we are running out of time, let me give one example. Example is from Lego. So Lego did not want to entertain its adult users, you know, people who are grown up and they're still playing with Lego. And they used to really get upset with all the queries because adults will use it. The Lego creations were meant for children. And they wanted more information regarding how children played with their toys. But one architect gave an example, given an order that you make this building for me, and I will use it. They actually then launched a series of Lego toys for architecture, and they made huge sales out of it. Though the adult users were not the main customers of Lego. Okay, so now you can give one example and then Professor Gupta will take over.
No, we have to close now.
No, they should give one example. So I need one example from anyone.
Okay.
Any example, please.
Where your mainstream users are not teaching you something interesting, but some users in other domains have found a use of your research, of your technology, of your material, which you never imagined. And now you say, well, that's interesting, we can do that. So for example, during COVID, you could see these spraying channels. This was not developed by the scientists, this was developed by the users. So can you not think of an application where the ingredients might have been given by the science technologist, but the new application has been discovered by users in totally different domain? That would be a good example of what kaleidoscopic framework is. That's interesting. Dentist drills to drill bones in an ancient DNA lab. Now that's a very, very interesting example where you're using a tool in one domain, say dentistry, for extracting the DNA from archaeological finds that you make. That's interesting.
So can I say something?
Yeah.
Yes. We know biomimicking has been a very latest trend. So the poorer structural forms materials are basically initially entertained because of structural applications, but with time it has moved on to switch into biomedical application. For example, we do knee transplants and all. The major limitation of those implants of conventional materials like stainless steel or titanium was that the stress shielding effect was very prominent. Stress shielding effect, if I'm not wrong. So basically, from structural material, this material have transited into more of to biomedical interest with time. So in structural application, it is very difficult to make this material in that big lot, porous material. It's very difficult to make batch manufacturing process for these materials. But in biomedical applications, the applications are more of customized and can be made out of a lab system. So the interest of porous materials are gradually getting transiting into biomedical applications. So I believe that can be one example.
Even you can take the example of water jet machining, which is quite popular. The water jet machining, that was a technique which was not much used by mechanical engineers, but that was more popularly used by dentists for doing the root canal and all. They pressurize the water and they'll make the hole and they can clear it actually. That was basically a mechanical technique also. And also cleaning of the fluorescence on the teeth. Actually, that's a grinding technique. Actually, again on the dental thing which we have showed. So
even I
like
don't know. I have one more example, but I don't know whether it will come under kaleidoscope or the telescope part. It's like the general relativity and standard relativity theory of Einstein, which was invented back many years, but recently the GPS tracking systems and all are like the fundamentals of general relativity theory are finding applications in GPS tracking system, like what we can see in our phones. So I believe that is more of a telescopic thing. It
No,
shouldn't be under
GPS was originally developed for submarine location in defense.
The tracking system, the live tracking
Yeah,
system
this
is
was
more
developed for submarines, and from submarines it came into now practically for all of us. We use for locating our friends and all other purposes, for getting, if your location is used for addressing, targeting the advertisement to you by various commercial players and so on. So GPS is being used now for a whole range of different purposes than what was originally developed.
fundamentally it is
That's
based on
example.
general relativity theory only.
Yeah, it's a good example. So very nice. I think we have got some very good examples, Anamika. So we will have to
We'll
let
wind
them.
it up.
We will have to let them go. But please remember that we will be sending you a list where a spreadsheet, and we will circulate it to you, where you will add your name details and some of the unmet need that you have identified either in your own domain or in other domain, but with social application. Now, even if you do not know how to meet it, doesn't matter. But the fact that you recognize the problem, maybe somebody else in the class may have a solution for that. So, and we will also circulate another sheet for another session on traditional knowledge of your family, your elders, your community. And maybe some of you like to do projects linked to those unmet need or those knowledge systems that you will discover. So thank you very much. All the best. Sustain your interest and enthusiasm, and I'm sure we are going to get a lot of insights. And the group that talked about milk, if you want to discuss among yourself, go ahead and form a group, and I'm sure it will be wonderful to really, we will save the chat and then try. Can the chat be saved? Can you save the chat so that we can?
Did so, sir.
Save kar
Thank
diya?
you. Yeah, kar diya.
So we will share that so that you can then do that. Good night.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Good
night, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, sir. Thank you,
Thank you,
ma'am.
sir.
Good
Thank you,
night.
ma'am.
Good night, sir. Good night, ma'am.
Thank you, sir.
Good night.
Thank you, sir. Good night, ma'am.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir, madam.
Good night, ma'am.
Ma'am, team should be from same.
Good night, sir. Good night.
Anybody can form a team.
Anybody
Team,
can.
you can
Good night,
form
sir.
across also. You can make across team. Doesn't matter.
Okay.
You can make across.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, sir.
Bye-bye. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.